It's the Security Weekly News, episode 103. Gootloader, the darker web, maybe even the less dark web, I'm not sure. Copyright infringement, a very special guest calling in from the future, and deep fakes. All this and more on Security Weekly News for the week of 28 February.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. As technology continues to evolve and expand, so have the attackers that put our critical systems in jeopardy. Core Impact from Core Security is a penetration testing tool that safely finds vulnerabilities using the same techniques of adversaries, with certified exploits and wizards that guide you through critical pen tests while maximizing the time of advanced testers by automating their routines. With Core Security, you can safeguard your infrastructure by limiting access, detecting threats, testing for security weaknesses, and efficiently monitoring data. Visit securityweekly.com/core security.
All right, settle down. So I saw these headlines about Gootloader, and I was like, what? I mean, that's like, so 2015. But anyway, I read a lot of headlines about Gootloader this week. So Gootloader is a multi-stage framework attack kit that apparently has been expanded from its original sort of banking Trojan roots into a pretty sophisticated modern framework that's capable of delivering pieces of malware. So basically, just like a lot of other modern frameworks, the Goot kit original malware has been really, really expanded. So currently it's been found with Kronos, with Revil, with Cobalt Strike, and other things that can be actually sourced into it. The reason it's interesting that it's different than all these other things we talk about is this particular framework was known for using something called search engine optimization poisoning. So this is a fairly interesting idea. And essentially what they do is they figure out a way to embed terms. And so this isn't really part, understand, of Gootloader itself, but they embed these terms on controlled sites that they figure out a way so that the Google search engine will push them all to the very top of the search list and that it matches up with some question that you're asking. So this is essentially the poisoning. So basically then Gootloader evolved from a JavaScript-based rat Trojan about 5 years ago to be today what they call a fileless PowerShell injection. I mean, but the real interesting part of the story, though, is the back end. They compromised a whole bunch of websites. Like they said, they had like 400 or more websites. So these are like legitimate websites. And they did not report in the article how they were compromising these, but it suggested credential stuffing, imagine that. The attackers then basically work to make sure that the compromised sites pop to the top of Google search indices for common questions. So answer leaks are then posted on these sites. The example they gave was like somebody was asking a question about real estate, and it has an answer from an admin. It was actually on a doctor site, but it was like a question about real estate. The question's right at the top. It's got an admin link. When you click the link, okay, now we're back to where everything else is, right? So they click the link. The question link then leads them to basically a standard kind of phishing thing. But the search engine poisoning is a pretty interesting thing. Once you click the link, then with this, there's a whole layout of how this thing works. But once you click the link, a zip file downloads, and then of course you have to open that. The name of the zip file matches the question you typed, and that contains the JavaScript file that contains Gootloader, Gootloader. And then basically it's the only file that gets written to the system. So even then it's not really fileless. It's just partially fileless. Then it basically is just a framework. So there's a command and control server. It downloads obfuscated shell scripts that are set to execute that the next reboot. So it just hides there. And the next time you restart your system, then it's going to load this. And the final payload can then be just about anything that they want to place on the command and control server. But the most common ones so far that we've seen were Kronos, Revil, and Cobalt Strike. So that's kind of, an interesting thing. But everybody had that story this week, and I was like, wow, that's an old thing. Amazon has denied that skills for Alicia, we're not going to say the real name, their popular voice assistant. I don't like to say it even at home. I don't even say it. But anyway, I just keep it called Alicia. But it can. They denied that there are new threat vectors in the skills for Alicia. So if you don't know about this, skills is the term that Amazon decided to use to describe third-party tools that can be added to Alicia to do other things. So wait a minute. So it's just like the Apple Store or the Google Store, whatever. But these are called skills. And here's what Amazon said, that the skills are vetted by Amazon before they can be added to the massive database of skills that already exist. So according to this story, researchers from North Carolina State, Ruhr University Bochum, who've been doing a lot of stuff lately, and Google, imagine that Google was in on this, published a research paper, which I did attach the wiki, which evaluated over, wait for it, 90,000 skills that are in this database. That's a lot of skills. I mean, no way anybody sneaked anything by these guys vetting this. No way. But anyway, the researchers said that they reviewed over 90,000 skills. And they identified some stuff that could be exploited in their paper. So they were talking about potential exploits. They did not identify anything that was being actively exploited. But they said there were exploits possible. So you can read that research paper as well. But according to Amazon, the company conducts security reviews for skill certification and continually monitors live skills for potentially malicious behavior. I don't know. Everybody always claims their store's safe. I mean, I've heard that. We've heard this before, and I guess they are until they're not, right? But there is a link to the research paper and story, so check it out if you're interested in such things. I couldn't resist this story about the dark web. So the dark web started off as this sort of nebulous sci-fi kind of thing. It sounded like William Gibson. And then it sort of moved into this like hot topic with every news outlet on Earth. So all of a sudden, everybody wanted to hear about the dark web. Everybody wanted to comment on the dark web. Everybody wanted to get on the dark web. Everybody wanted to learn how to use the dark web, and on and on and on. And, it has really moved from a kind of like really, really obscure place like Silk Road days to kind of Times Square, and it was the Times Square 1975 feel, to today. It's all owned by Disney. So in 20 more years, I guess basically it will be Disney. So then there'll have to be a darker web or a darkest web or something like that, so that because all the tourists will go to the dark web, and they'll have to have more and more darker webs. But today, anyway, this story was about criminal job boards that were in there amongst all the child porn and the sites selling snuff films and malware frameworks and heroin delivered straight to your doorstep, guaranteed 100% pharmaceutical quality. Not that I've ever been on the dark web. But the article was interesting because Joan, who wrote this, really put together a pretty nice observation on these processes for various hacking groups that were going on. And for example, there was a listing on XSS, which is a Russian language site, which has the Sodinokibi and Revil Collective, and they were holding a competition for criminals. Well, I guess they're not criminals yet, right? You're innocent until proven guilty or something like that. But for people seeking criminal work back in 2019, and the contest required that you submit a technical paper on a topic that they chose, and if you won, they would hire you to work for them. Okay, so, that sounds like some kind of like regular hiring practice. On the Kickass site, which is an English language forum, Dark Overlord Group was actively recruiting. So they actually had ads up for different things that they wanted, and they were looking for people with specific skill sets that could do certain things. The article goes on to describe all the current skills that she had found looking through all these things. And the number one skill was actually pretty funny. It was this Russian word probiv, which basically is slang for insider threats. I mean, it's not, but that's what it means. So not really anything new there. If you're working for a specific sector or some company and you want to provide information from the inside, you can usually find a buyer. I mean, you don't need the internet for that. You go back in history. If you work for, a defense contractor, you can probably find somebody to illegally sell stuff to. Ransomware groups tend to be hiring very staged, very specific skills for various parts of their ransomware compromise. So, can you gain access to secure systems and release data to us? Well, we'll hire you. But apparently XSS has actually had trainings and such on there to try to help new hackers get started. So almost like a internship. So, I'm wondering how long, it will, pretty soon the dark web people will unionize and they'll be asking for like Orthodox Christmas Day off or May Day or something like that, and maybe a decent retirement plan to go along with it. So once that starts happening, I'm sure there's going to be a darker web, like 8th Avenue like if you went over on 8th Avenue, it used to be after Disney got hold of Times Square and all the porn theaters shut down and became like M&M stores and stuff like that. All right. Copyright infringement has been a thing since the dawn of time. And I still remember delivering a nasty notice from Sony to some students who were being charged for using Napster, and a very tearful Japanese student who had foolishly drawn a customized Mickey Mouse and put it on her brand new website in 1999, and she was being told she was going to be sued. They were going to take legal action against her across the world. She could be deported. She could be, and I was like, wow, Disney, like, lighten up. Geez, but they take that very seriously over at Disney, and if you don't believe them, cross that up, and a bunch of Disney people will come and straighten you out with ball bats, or they're Mickey Mouse brand ball bats. Disney's going to be. If I disappear after today's show, I probably will be found at the bottom of the bay with some concrete goofy shoes on or something like that. But it doesn't take long for criminals to catch on to these kind of things, and apparently they've been sending out fake copyright infringement notices. So this is a thing that gets you to click the link, which is, again, it's just back to phishing. But it's an interesting way to do this because I have had people call me. Like I said, I had a student who was in tears. I have had faculty members call me and say, is this real? I just got a letter from this company saying I've got a picture up that they own, and on and on and on. And of course, once you click the link on this to see what it's all about, they get you to give them some personal information. There is a video on the link you can share with your users. That's actually a pretty good video, but they do talk about that. And it probably not a bad idea to advise if you have teachers, trainers, or pretty much anybody else that's using the internet who might put up a trademark or something like that and be threatened with a lawsuit, and all of a sudden you get this notice and go, oh no, and you click the link, and then that's it. There is a new tool to jailbreak iPhones after iOS 11 and before 14.4. This tool is it's called Uncover, and it uses CVE 2021-1782. So that was a race condition in the kernel, and it allowed privilege escalation by any application, and in this case, Uncover, and would subsequently be used for jailbreaking iPhones. This has been patched, so if they've updated to 14.4, it won't work. But if you get one to examine in your forensics work or whatever that hasn't had a patch applied, well, this may well work. But remember, if you try to jailbreak stuff, it can brick your phone, so, always try it on a friend's phone first. Don't actually do that. That would be bad. China and India began feuding back in May of last year over some border disputes, and kinetic warfare ensued, and so a bunch of people got shot. After that, a concerted effort was documented now of China, or at least reputedly China, sending attacks against Indian power plants. So they've been actually actively attacking that. And they were described by India as originating in Chengdu. They had a whole bunch of details in the article, if you want to read it, about the types of attacks that they were directing at these power sites. And then, of course, India has a state-sponsored group called Sidewinder, which was targeting Chinese military and government sites with spear phishing attacks. So I think we're likely not even seeing all the invisible warfare that's going on, but that's going on probably pretty soon in the near future. There will just be these wars happen. They'll last about 4 hours. Nobody will know what happened, but people will be sitting around going, why are the lights flickering? And that kind of thing. And then later we may or may not ever find out what went on. My next guest, oh boy, is a special guest calling from the future. I always love time zones because I always remember my daughter was little. I called her from a train in China, and I was telling her how it's tomorrow, and she thought that was just like mind blowing that I was on the next day and things like that. It's not that far away, but our special guest today has been escorted from some of the top and not so top bars in Las Vegas. He was once described by Keith Richards as, no, not him again. I can't take it. And if you say his name 3 times in the mirror, you may see an elephant. And David Cameron once asked, why does he always smell of seaweed? But anyway, here is my dear friend and the one and only Aaran Leyland, who is the CEO of Restricted Access Limited, and he's going to join us to talk about AI. Hi, Aaran.
Hi, Dr. Doug.
It's
like I've had a song in my head all day. Sorry to absolutely climb all over you, but a song, Barbie Girl, infamous, and all I can sing all day is Dr. Doug, calling Dr. Doug. And it's been in my head all day. So
Well, I'm happy
we need to get through this quick.
I'm happy to have that effect on you. So it's like that can be cured by alcohol, I think, or at least consummated by alcohol or something like that.
If DEF CON possibly wasn't cancelled this year, we could make that a reality. Right?
Good old DEF CON days. Don't we all miss DEF CON so very much?
Bring it back.
I know,
it's
but
it's not the same online.
I don't think so. So I think maybe one more year before we get to see each other again. By then, we'll all, you'll have an even longer beard.
I still have my sticker, Let's Keep DEF CON Weird, and I really love that about DEF CON.
Yeah. So you're going to talk to us about AI?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to fire in data. I've got so much content here that I'm going to have to speak nearly as fast as you. Otherwise, Johnny will be cutting me off and saying goodbye.
They'll just play the music and, drag you off. Ricky Gervais will drag you off stage, so...
I am from the future, though, so I don't know how I can correct that.
So what's happening in the future with AI?
Okay, so GCHQ to use artificial intelligence to tackle child sex abuse, disinformation, and trafficking, with their director Jeremy Fleming stating AI could have a profound effect on the way GCHQ works. Obviously, GCHQ is similar to the NSA, for anybody who doesn't know. At GCHQ, they think of AI as a type of software that can learn to find complex patterns in data. They will then take these conclusions and use them to automate or augment business processes. In some cases, use them to manage quite basic, highly repetitive activities, like my first job, and in others, they might tackle more sophisticated but narrowly defined challenges and what I wish my next job to be. It's nice of GCHQ to give us their definition, although in practice, as we know, there's numerous definitions, even among what we call the expert community. These have and will continue to develop over time, as we know. So the Alan Turing Institute sums up AI succinctly as being about machines which act intelligently, and the Royal Society recently defined it as involving computers learning directly from examples. So this segues into a brief explanation on my understanding of AI, and I think to understand it better that we must understand that there are two types, narrow AI and general AI. So narrow AI is designed to perform one task at a time and to continue improving execution. The goal is to find an automated solution to a problem or inconvenience or improve something that already works but can work better. And this is currently what most artificial intelligence is, with examples, self-driving cars, recognizing your face at the bank, all you robbers beware, and asking our smartphones about weather. If it's my iPhone, it's always wrong, so someone needs to update the AI. Obviously, with reward comes risk, conversely, and it's been widely reported that the use of artificial intelligence could have unintended consequences that are dangerous or undesirable. Some are concerned about algorithmic bias, and that's been heavily reported that AI programs may unintentionally become biased after processing data that exhibits bias. And there's been plenty of high-profile cases on this, some funnier than others. So the second form is general AI, and some call this the true AI, because it is the next step towards more comprehensive machine intelligence. So rather than focusing on a single task, the goal is to teach the machine to comprehend and reason on a broad level, just like a human would. This involves independent learning from experience, which is the way humans learn, and reason is the goal. I'm sure you know this with your students, Dr. Doug, and yeah, lots of independent learning going on there. So this form of AI is closer to what the average person would see as science fiction. So here comes the notable risks of general AI. So some big names here: Stephen Hawking, Bill Gates, and Elon Musk have expressed concerns about the possibility that AI could evolve to the point that humans could not control it, with Hawking theorizing that this could spell the end of the human race. So now, after that, on a cheery note, and with all of us having a better understanding of AI, or at least the types, GCHQ goes on to say, we publish a first of its kind paper outlining how we could use AI to help protect the UK. In the paper, we've revealed how our analysts could use AI responsibly to protect the UK from threats, from state-backed disinformation campaigns right through to cyber attacks. So the paper, which was published on the 24th of February 2021, is called Ethics of AI, Pioneering a New National Security. And it explains why technology enabling problem solving at scale and speed, and how it will be at the heart of their mission to keep the country safe in an increasingly complex world. The paper details how they will ensure they use AI fairly and transparently, applying existing tests of necessity and proportionality, and we all know how that goes. This includes establishing an AI ethical code of practice, which we'll talk about later, to recruiting more diverse talent and help develop and govern their use of AI, protecting privacy and striving for systematic fairness. So they've set out some interesting examples of how they could use the technology, including fact-checking and detecting deep fake media to tackle foreign state disinformation. So VentureBeat has reported on the February the 11th, deepfakes, media that takes a person in an existing image, audio recording or video, and then replaces them with someone else's likeness using AI, are multiplying quickly. They go on to say, that's troubling not only because these deep fakes might be used to sway opinions during an election, we've seen that coming, or implicate a person in a crime, but also that they've already been abused to generate pornographic material of actors and defraud a major energy producer. Hopefully you won't have seen that when you were not on the dark web, Dr. Doug. Data Center Knowledge has reported that the only thing stopping the attackers from doing all that was the fact that they're still making so much money from traditional attacks like ransomware. But at RSA, Symantec, CTO Hugh Thompson, Symantec, I guess it's Broadcom now, talked about 3 recent cases he saw where hackers used computer-generated deepfake voices to scam companies out of millions. The next on the list is mapping international networks that enable human, drugs, and weapon trafficking. Obviously, stopping this is not just good for the UK, but it would be good globally. And it's reported by the US Department of State that about 14,000 to 17,000 people are trafficked into the United States each year, and that trafficked victims are often beaten and brutalized. I imagine that is people that don't want to come to the US rather than people that a certain person tried to build a wall to stop. So next on the list is analysing chat rooms for evidence of grooming to prevent child sexual abuse. The BBC, unfortunately, has had to report during the pandemic that reports of child abuse images online have increased by almost 50% during lockdown, and they gained that information from the Internet Watch Foundation. I would hazard a guess that that problem is factors above this, and it would be good to see an agency look directly to combat this. So finally, on ways the GCHQ will use it, how the National Cybersecurity Centre could analyse activity at scale to identify malicious software to protect the UK from cyber attacks. So Derek Mankey, a global security strategist, states that AI and machine learning, it sounds like every time I go to Black Hat, and I speak to someone trying to sell me something. Let cyber criminals create malware that is smart enough to hunt for vulnerabilities and decide which payload to deploy to take advantage of them. That means that malware doesn't have to communicate back to command and control servers and can evade detection. I guess that'll cream out things like bro. So, in a nod to ethics of a journalist, I'm reporting from the Guardian newspaper, which I'm led to believe targets a well-educated, relatively young, predominantly male and liberal audience centred around London. Partly me, I guess. So they've stated that Jeremy Fleming's comments come as the agency endeavours to placate critics of bulk surveillance activities. So from my perspective, The Guardian appears to state the obvious here, but GCHQ will rely on, in part, on monitoring people's phone and messaging data and watching social media profiles. Shocking news, this for a signals intelligence organisation. But The Guardian goes on to report the key figures, sources, at GCHQ believe AI is able to point MI5 and counter-terrorism police to miss clues in identifying potentially deadly threats as part of what insiders said would amount to a step change in its operation. So The Guardian, putting its own slant onto the comprehensive reporting, they have stated that there are reports that using algorithms to investigate and monitor individuals has generated controversy in some areas of law enforcement, and that there are concerns, for example, that tools such as facial recognition software have exhibited a race bias when previously tested. It also emerged earlier this month that German police want to be able to create fake computer-generated images in sting operations against paedophiles. I'm not sure how we feel about that. Going on, Dara Murray, a senior lecturer at Human Rights Centre and School of Law at University of Essex, said the problem for intelligence agencies such as GCHQ was that it was unclear what was ruled in and ruled out. The difficulty with ethical frameworks, and we have seen this consistently across the tech sector, is that they are notoriously imprecise. They do not establish concrete obligations. And then Alexander Babuta, a research fellow with the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, said GCHQ's problem was making sense of the vast volumes of data that it collects. The challenge is filtering it and triaging it to a manageable level so human analysts can make sense of it. He went on to say this is a time-consuming and resource-intensive process, but it could also be less intrusive because the data is handled by machines, not people. What is not to like there? Although he does go on to sensationalize, but there are limitations of the power of technology. GCHQ does not believe it is yet possible to predict that someone has been radicalized to the point where they might commit a terrorism offense, a technology which carries echoes of the film Minority Report, in which people are arrested pre-crime, as all the geeks will know. Science fiction becoming science fact there. I personally believe that GCHQ can be applauded for its open approach as much as it can for a secretive organization. There will, however, always be arguments for and against, especially centering around how adversaries will use AI and whether or not they will take an ethical approach, and do we need to be unethical to combat that approach. For further reading, you can find the report on the GCHQ website if you dare to go. So, that's done, finally. What are your thoughts, Dr. Doug?
I think that was very comprehensive review of that, and I think your observations are astute. I think the future with AI is complicated, and I do agree with all the really smart people who also said that it may exceed human limitations pretty quickly. I'm not sure we'll be able to stop it when it does, because if it becomes smarter than us, it may just decide to activate Skynet, and that's the end of that. But in the meantime, we can worry about being detected as radicalized by AI facial recognition or something like that. So thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us. It was great, and it was good to have you on my show finally, and after all these years of being around. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dr. Doug.
All right.
13 months after your first episode, I gather, but we finally made it 1 year and 1 month afterwards.
There you go. That's pretty good, actually. So.
Yeah.
And finally, William Gibson, speaking of sci-fi and future tech, William Gibson always envisioned a world which contained both real and artificial images in augmented reality. He was always very hung up on the idea that we would all eventually be seeing augmented reality all the time. That's pretty much come to pass. The startup CG Trader is now providing a valuable service to create deep fake images of household products to make your home look a lot cooler, or market products in the background while you're receiving your Golden Globes award on Zoom. Do you live in a tar paper shack, but you want to appear as if you live in Versailles? No problem. They can make it look that way, and nobody will ever know the difference. Obviously, the real focus on selling things without actually having to give you the things, because that kind of sucks. So it's like you're going to endorse our product, but you don't actually get the free product. I did that once, and I had something I was using at school, and I thought they'd let me keep it. And then they called me like a week later, and were like, are you finished with that now? And I was like, oh, I thought we would get to keep this. And he was like, oh, no, you don't get to keep it. So it kind of sucks from that perspective. But now, I may look like I'm on a badass podcast set with really cool people, but in reality, I'm trying to balance on a small stool that's sitting in about 3 inches of raw sewage. So, but cool videos are in this article, so you can check them out. So you should. Great. Thank you to Aaran Leyland. And that's a news in the never-ending time of plague. I'm Doug White, and we'll see you next time.